Seeing with 2020 Spiritual Vision is the CSL theme for this year, and April's theme is Bright Beginnings. Today's topic, Unwritten in honor of Earth Day. Mark Waldman and Chris Manning, PhD, wrote in Neurowisdom, the new brain science of money, happiness, and success. Tucked away behind the folds of the neocortex are two of the newest evolutionary structures of the human brain, the insula and the anterior cingulate. They contain special neurons that give you profound powers of perception. They enhance your ability to be self-directed and socially aware, but they remain largely underdeveloped in most people. Recent brain imaging studies have proved that you can consciously strengthen these neurons and the connections between your social brain, your decision-making brain, frontal lobes, and the emotional centers that shape your desires and level of happiness. When you stimulate these complex circuits through mindfulness and self-reflection, something happens. Negative feelings and thoughts are transformed into optimism. Your motivation and creativity increases. Your decision-making skills are enhanced, and your ability to empathize with others rapidly grows. Compassion increases, self-love soars, and a new voice can be heard, one that will guide you toward greater awareness and serenity. The voice within is your inner teacher and spiritual compass. It will help you to achieve your financial and emotional goals and bring more passion and satisfaction into your relationships and work. Nurture it daily, and it will enlighten and enrich your life. So let us now speak this affirmation out loud together with enthusiasm. Today, I am rising in love universal. I am a full participant in the great awakening of humanity. Letting go of all that is selfish and divisive, I write a new chapter of my life now that expresses the love that I am in truth. Thank you. And now we have Reverend Kathleen to give us our message for today.
Thank you, Linda. There's some really amazing work that's going on in the meeting of science and consciousness, the scientist and the mystic. And I'm really grateful to people like Mark Waldman, Andrew Newberg, who actually write an article in the Science of Mind magazine each month. So by now, my friends, I know that it is dawning on all of us that Mother Earth and all of her creatures are finally having a respite from all of the human activity and all of the consequences of that human activity on the planet. With fewer fossil fuels, as Peggy mentioned in her prayer, the air is becoming amazingly clearer, and not just in certain places, but all over the world, particularly in cities. And people are able to see things that they haven't seen in 30 and sometimes even 60 years. The tops of the Himalayas are now visible from places that were not able to see them for 30 years or so. And the water in Venice is clear for the first time in 60 years. With the advent of the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, to me, this is a very profound statement that is being made for us. That is, I'm claiming it. I'm claiming that this is a motivating stimulus for humanity to spur them all, and I'm saying them, us, to spur all of us into action, to do our part to remove the obstacles that have been in the way of Mother Nature naturally restoring herself. And you know, it all begins within. because the obstacles that we see, the results of them, the pollution and so on, begin within as thoughts of fear, divisiveness, competition, greed, all of those things that produce things that harm the planet and harm each other. Ernest Holmes, I think, so beautifully expresses this new mindset that's required for us to really make some lasting change. He said, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. I know there is but one mind, which is the mind of God, in which all people live and move and have their being. I know that there is a divine pattern for humanity, and within this pattern, there is infinite harmony and peace, cooperation, unity, and mutual helpfulness." So how do we get there? How do we, as a whole, get to the place where that is our mindset, where we think in terms of interconnectedness, oneness, and that we're truly all in this together? And the signs of it are showing up. I mean, we're all in this together on TV a lot lately. And so thank you, Deb, for your part of that inspiration, for writing your song that we're going to be ending our service with. Though, what I love is the way in which science is finally catching up with what the mystics have taught over time. And for those of us who really love to see some solid proof, and of course I've seen solid proof by seeing the results of my spiritual practice over the years, but it's also nice to see that more and more people are coming on board in the field of the sciences to prove what the mystics have taught, and that we can literally rewire our brains for higher consciousness through tried and true spiritual practices, meditation, and we call it spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer, filling our minds with ideas of truth, mindfulness, gratitude, forgiveness. And that particular book that was mentioned by Linda when she read it, by Mark Waldman, which is called Neuro Wisdom. This is a full book on not only the results of brain imaging, but also actual practices and ways to put those practices into practice, so that we can truly rewire our brains. So we're not only activating new parts of our brains through these practices, but we are also interconnecting everything, which is a beautiful metaphor for that state of oneness, bringing our brains into a state of oneness, our body minds into a state of oneness, so that we are divine centers of operation for that higher consciousness of oneness, of universal love. And here's the thing. It requires that we practice daily, that we keep up the practice, and that not only that, we are aware of our thoughts throughout the day so that we can turn them around when they're not going in the right direction. I know this is nothing new for those of us who have been involved in New Thought for many years, but it's a great reminder of how important it is we take responsibility for ourselves. There's a saying that Reverend Johnny Coleman, brought to the planet that I think is so powerful in this instance. She said, "It works if you work it." These principles that we teach, these practices that we teach, work if you work it. They don't work if you just use it as a source of entertainment. So I'm really encouraging all of you, if you haven't already committed to a daily practice, that you do that now, that you find accountability partners. This is where prayer partners really come in handy. This is where joining Marianne Ruan in the 40-day challenge, this is where that kind of thing comes in. to start a new habit pattern so that it's just a part of your day, like brushing your teeth. And so as we bring our minds into alignment through spiritual practice with our true nature, then that becomes our default program. That's how we show up in the world. And it's through this consciousness of oneness, of everything all interconnected and working together, that we can attain the seemingly impossible. And to me, that's so important as we approach Earth Day, to realize that we can attain the impossible together. We truly can do that. Even our community, with the size that we are, if we all dedicate ourselves to daily practice, to condition the mind, to have the mind be in a condition that it gives birth to new ideas, new innovations, and also a commitment to doing our part each and every day through recycling and all of the different sustainability practices that Michelle's been sharing with us in the newsletter and its services each week. So we can do this together. So what is it that's going on that gets in the way? And it's what we call our story. So my intention today is to invite all of us to rewrite our stories, to really take responsibility of rewriting our stories of the past. And yes, we can do that. Brain science shows that we can literally reframe our past and feel differently about it. We can tell ourselves a different story. And also to write the unwritten story of our present and the future. So rewriting the past. When I think of rewriting the past, I immediately think of forgiveness. Forgiveness, yes. I mean, it is the bridge from victim consciousness into the higher states of consciousness. Forgiveness work is absolutely part of how you make that bridge, how you make that leap. So what is forgiveness in truth? It is a shift of perception, a way of looking at things, and it's a new perception of looking at things that frees us to be in the present moment instead of revisiting the past over and over again in our minds, because the past is gone. So as we look at our past from a higher perception, we free ourselves. There's a story of Buddha. He was a master at this. And from Buddhism, they call it non-attachment. So actually, if you practice this in each and every moment, you wouldn't have to spend a lot of time practicing forgiveness. So let's see how Buddha modeled this. The story goes that one day, Buddha was addressing his followers when a man unleashed a whole series of obscenities at him. The Buddha simply smiled very softly at the man. And at this, the man continued to escalate his words of abuse. Finally, the man gave up and said to Buddha, "Why are you so unmoved? I've tried everything imaginable here to upset you." And the Buddha said, "If you are offered a gift and refuse to accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man thought for a moment and he said, "I guess it belongs to the giver." And Buddha replied to that. He said, "Well, sir, I have declined your gift." What a beautiful way of being. And that's what these practices instill in us, this way of looking at life, that we're able to stay centered in source, in truth, in love, and not take on the abuse of others or the condemnation of others, realizing that everything, this is from A Course in Miracles, that everything is either love or a call for love. That man in his own way was calling for love, otherwise he wouldn't be doing that. So for those of us who have not yet reached Buddha mind, we practice forgiveness. to free ourselves from having taken on that unwanted gift of someone else's harsh words or actions. And so there is a very short but powerful phrase that we can use each and every time we notice ourselves revisiting the past. And it's this. We imagine the person in front of us or the people and say, you have no power over me. I set myself free and I set you free. I'm going to repeat that so you can say that with me. You have no power over me. I set myself free and I set you free. As we forgive, we move ourselves out of the revisiting of the past over and over again into the present moment. And this is where our power is to not only create or co-create our present moment experience, but to co-create our experience from this moment forward, to start planning new visions and new seeds. So this is valuable for our own lives, and this is valuable for our collective lives on this planet. As we forgive and move into a higher perspective, we are truly rewriting our story of the past. And I'd like to give you an example of this. In the late 80s and early 90s, I really came on board with this idea of forgiveness through studying first A Course in Miracles, and then getting involved into science of mind, into a religious science church. And back in those days, I did a lot of forgiveness work. I had this whole story about my past that was making me constantly miserable. And so I was determined I was going to let go of this. So in practitioner training, we took this to the next step. Not only did we do the forgiveness work, but we also rewrote the story of our past. So I changed mine from a grievance story to a story of transcension, a story of how I overcame great obstacles, transcended, and became the person that I am here today. That was a huge burden off of me, and it's something that any of us can do. So I invite you, if you haven't done so already, to give yourself some time journaling and rewriting the story of the past. Because now you can be free to write a new story. And that's the next thing that I wanted to share. So I have a beautiful story to share with you. It took place in December of 2005. It was a front page article in the San Francisco Chronicle on December 14, 2005. And this is how it goes. A humpback female whale had become entangled in hundreds of yards of fishing line and rope and crab traps that encircled her entire body, all the way down to her tail, including her torso and even line going through her mouth. She struggled to remain afloat. A fisherman spotted her just outside the Golden Gate Bridge and radioed an environmental group for help. Within hours, a rescue team arrived and dove into the water to untangle her, which was a very dangerous proposition because one slap of a tail of a whale like that could kill a rescuer. And they worked for hours, slowly cutting the ropes. And the interesting thing is that she never became aggressive, not even one moment. In fact, one of the divers who cut the rope out of her mouth said that he noticed that her eye followed him while he was cutting, and when he looked in it, he could see gratitude. Eventually she was freed, and when she was free, the diver said she did something totally unexpected. She swam in joyous circles, and then Even more amazing, she came up to each one of the divers and nudged them one at a time as if to say thank you, and then went on her way. What a beautiful story for Earth Day. And then you might be asking, well, what does this story have to do with rewriting my story, or writing a new story, I guess is what I'm saying, with writing a new story? Because, my friends, it actually has everything to do with it. A state of gratitude is the consciousness from which you're able to write extraordinary stories. Abraham Maslow once said, the primary cause of personal suffering and being stuck in the past is taking our blessings for granted. I'm going to say that again. The primary cause of personal suffering and being stuck in the past is taking our blessings for granted. And you may have noticed that. You may have noticed people who have so many blessings in their lives, and all they do is they focus on what's wrong. And maybe you're one of those people at times. So it's really important to understand that the consciousness that gives birth to the new is a consciousness that's in a state of gratitude. And that means consciously looking for the good and then feeling grateful for it, or acknowledging, saying to others, thank you. Something that we learned a long time ago as children, and yet so valuable for rewiring our brains in a way that we show up as a new being, a new higher order being. And listen to what Mark Waldman says about how gratitude rewires the brain. He said, it rewires us for enhanced social relationships, increased motivation, optimism, alertness, enthusiasm, determination, attentiveness, self-esteem, pro-social behavior, and life satisfaction as you give thanks for your blessings that you've received from others. You are literally rewiring yourselves to be a healing presence on the planet, to be one that gives birth to the new. So I'd like to share with you how even in the midst of challenges like we're going through right now, that we can write a new story. And many of you have heard this. It's been out online recently. And it's a poem by Kathleen O'Meara that was written in March 2020 in the midst of this COVID-19 and being sheltered in place. And just notice her ability to look for the good. People stayed home, read books, listened, rested, exercised, made art, played, learned new ways of being, and were still and listened more deeply. Someone meditated, someone prayed, someone danced, someone met their own shadow, and people started thinking differently. People healed. And in the absence of people who lived in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger ended and people found themselves, I love how she said found themselves, their true selves, they grieved for the dead and they made new choices and dreamed new visions and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully, just as they had been healed. Such a beautiful bringing together all that I've talked about today. So I'd like all of us to practice that in this moment. You can use the chat box, any of you who know how to use the chat box, or you can just bring out your journals and paper. So I'd like to put this into effect right now. Let's become engaged in this process in this very moment. So before you do, you can get ready for it. If everybody grabs their journals, and I'll give you a moment to do that. And then I'd like you to just settle in. Take a breath and relax deeply. Close your eyes. And so we're going to feel our feet. Feel the bottoms of your feet. And feel the energy that you suddenly notice when you bring your attention there. Where attention goes, energy flows. And then bring your attention to any part of your body that feels a little tense and tight. So we can allow energy to flow there. And also feel the energy in your hands, in your heart, in your solar plexus, all the way down into your abdominal area where the dantian is in Eastern cultures. Just see everything filled with light. Let's put our attention on the brain and see all of the centers in the brain activated in light, lit up. And then let's imagine, and knowing that as we are imagining this, that there is just a huge column of light above us, and that there, as we go upward, it also goes outward and all around us, forming a huge globe of light all around us. Only light comes through that light globe, and only light emits from it. So let's begin with a practice of gratitude to get ourselves in that higher mindset. Think of people who have been kind to you, support you, help you, encourage you, and give thanks. Feel grateful silently. So if you're somebody who needs to journal that, to write people's names down, you can do that. Whatever your process is perfect for you. Thinking of people we feel grateful for. And so now, in honor of Mother Earth, let us begin to write a new story, your own version of how the current state of affairs is leading to the great awakening of humanity and the restoring of the earth. So again, you can either use the chat room to write these new visions down, or your journal. know that you'll continue to write after we leave today, but I would like to bring this to a close with a prayer. So let's turn within, taking a breath, giving thanks for this upwelling of creativity, for our commitment to be the greatest expressions of the divine that we can possibly be here on this planet, to be the embodiment of universal love, all-inclusive love, to be that place or that condition in consciousness that gives birth to a whole new earth, a whole new way of being in relationship with our beloved planet, with each other, with the plant and animal kingdom. I'm knowing that these ideas continue to flow in us, through us, and as us, and that our part is realized and recognized in that master plan of the restoration of Mother Earth and the reconnection of all humanity in a state of harmony and peace. Because we live, move, and have our being in one infinite source, one infinite presence, one mind, one life, God, the infinite. And that infinite universal presence is who we are. As we continue to recognize that, to anchor that in our neurobiology with our spiritual practice, we truly are showing up as the presence of love, as the presence of high consciousness and wisdom and strength and creativity, co-creating heaven on earth, a world that works for everyone and everything. So let's embrace this truth as happening here and now, happening here and now. A whole new leap in consciousness for our entire spiritual community, happening now. And I give my thanks for that. I can feel that all the way deep down in my soul, in my bones, and feeling that sense of we're all in this together, that sense of interconnectedness and oneness with all life. And knowing the manifestation is taking place because we come from a place of deep conviction and knowing and understanding the power of universal law that takes the imprint of our word and brings it into manifestation. So I release this into the universal law of mind, entrusting it, knowing that it is so, it is happening here and now. And I invite us all to say together, yes, and so it is. Amen.
Amen.